Okay, folks, good morning. Here we are with back at the Russian tanks that we were working on last night. A chilly morning in here. Not a complaint, just an observation. Free air conditioning. Still drinking coffee that's cold. No point in drinking warm stuff. So, yesterday we left off, we finished a T-26, except for being sealed. It's done. I'm trying to figure out why there's these fibers that are here. Well, and being on a base also, because it's not on a base. And we started on the other T-26. And we're just going to detail up some other points that need to have attention drawn to them on the model. And then we'll do weathering on this one too. And then we'll move to the two BTs. And you can tell already, if you look at the color the BTs are in, how this is lightened up. Well, these turrets don't want to turn. We're going to have to fix that. Anyhow, you can already tell how much it's been lightened up just by the... There we go, that's a little bit better. The light's weird in here for camera work. Oh, I keep moving it the wrong way. Both of these were spray painted black. And then we dry brushed the Russian green. Then we did an Agrax Earthshade wash. And we let it dry overnight because that actually takes quite a bit of time to dry. And then we dry brushed the same green on top of it. And then lightened it up a couple levels using dark sand as the lightener. So, and then eventually we'll get to this. Painting tools and mufflers and things like that. So you can see the color progression. And it doesn't look quite like you see it on the screen there. It would look, I would not be happy if it looked like it does on the screen, but you could tell by changing the aspect how it's... Actually, the middle one is the one that looks the best on the screen right now, but not in real life. We'll have to take pictures of it to kind of be more representative. But anyhow, on to the BT. Is there anything that I need to highlight? I think I'm going to leave it alone. We're going to go in here and we're going to paint the things that are black, like the road wheels and things like that. And paint the muffler, and then we can go about dry brushing it. It should be good. All right, so let's get some fresh black here. This one's old. Might be up to the task. And we don't want to use our super good brush for this. This one should suffice. I think I have something else that's kind of in between the two. Don't want to use your super precision brushes for everything because then they're not good, there we go. They're not in really good shape when you need them for faces and things like that. The ones I use for faces, I generally don't use for anything else. Because even taking care of them, they crap out. So you want to try to get the most longevity out of it. It's a pain trying to find some of those precision brushes sometimes. Just a little bit of flow aid to keep that flowing well. Jared Heine. Sounds like I have a bit of a cold. It might. I've been I picked up, I think, some allergies, is what I can track it down to being, but I'm trying to be a little quiet as the girls are stirring, so. But I feel fine. But a couple of days, like on Tuesday, I couldn't film. I was just coughing too bad. It was like coughing with like no other symptoms. So something was causing the sinuses all the way in the back of, I couldn't even feel them. It was just making me cough. Like every 30 seconds I was coughing. So, everybody's favorite question, what rules do you use these for? Well, I haven't played them in about 20 years. But I was working on my own set of rules a long time ago because I'm very anal retentive when it comes to World War II stuff. I want very specific, detailed set of rules. And in the process, they came out with a set of rules that was really close, kind of the direction that we were going in. And I just picked those up, and I've played them a few times, and I'm pretty happy with them. They're called The Face of Battle. It's by Merrimack Enterprises. They're no longer in business, although you can get some of their stuff on, is it War Games Vault? But the core rules aren't in there. But they're not tournament based. They're 1 man equals 1 man, and they're actual scale. So you have grenades that'll go about 7 or 8 inches away in 20 mil. And that's what I want to play. I don't want to play operational stuff. I've played operational type games before. They don't scratch my World War II itch. I'm not opposed to playing those other games. I just don't want to build stuff for that. I'm not motivated to build things for 1 to 5 scale games that I've done before. That's actually what I started with, is playing Command Decision back in the late 80s. So that just doesn't scratch my itch. So stuff like bolt action and things like that are way too generic for me. The only one that came close that's out there is Chain of Command. And I have to modify it so much that, I don't need to play a platoon on each side. If you're a person that says, I got to play with a platoon fighting a platoon, minimum, I'm doing a terrible job of this. And it's not because I'm talking at the same time, because this is like the only thing I can multitask at. That brush needs to be spanked. If you're a person that needs to play with a lot of troops on the side, then this isn't the rule set for you. And it just depends on what you want to do. I mean, there's a couple things that if I'm going to do a World War II skirmish, I'm really uncompromising about. One of them is individual troop activation. I don't want somebody's turn to come up. Oh, we're back to this. I don't want somebody's turn to come up and you're able to move an entire squad at once. You move one person. And likewise, you pull another chit and, you could have someone on your team or the opponent. The way I'm going to get around it running really slow is I'm going to run one side and all the people will run the other one. Or I'll just solo it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I haven't done World War II stuff in almost 20 years. And it is time to get back to it. So I don't plan on running this at shows. It's just too much to cart around and too much of a time constraint. Like, okay, we need to wrap it. No, none of this. We got to wrap this up. It'll be over when it's over. This doesn't pay enough to be rushed doing it. And I'm probably going to play it here. So, but I'm going to need to get some practice running some solo game before I present it to other people. Because I don't want people to just go, hey, I want you to try this game that I really like. And then I don't know what I'm doing. The game bogs down and nobody wants to play it again. You know? So I'm more interested if this is a simulation than as a game per se. In other words, if all my local players hate this game and they don't want to play it again, well, tough shit. I'm still going to be playing it, even if I'm going to be building stuff for it. I'm doing this for me, not other people. So, and I'm kind of done playing vague, abstract games that have rule sets that you can't understand. Even if you explain it to somebody 50 times, I'm just done with the headaches. So, that doesn't mean I'm not going to play medievals and ancients. It just means that have to do them my own way, and stuff that makes sense. Tell you, it's really frustrating to put out hundreds of videos on how to play this rule set and get the frequently asked questions group to meet, pray to all the gods to get them to meet, come to a conclusion, publish it, and then people still aren't sold that that's the way to play the rules because some guy can't write clearly. I'm just done. Let somebody else fight that war. I've done it for way too long. I don't want to fight wars you can't win. So, and it's not that I've had a bad experience doing it, because I don't have any problems playing with the local people, but I want to grow it. I want whatever it is that I'm doing. If I'm putting out if I'm playing a game for competitive reasons, for tournament play or something, I want it to grow, and there's no way for that to grow in the current state that it's in. It's just too difficult of a climb. And I know because I was involved in it. And I'm not interested in going like, oh, we should play Art de la Guerre. Everybody plays Art de la Guerre. Art de la Guerre has the same freaking problems. It's abstract type of game, and I kind of got into playing tournaments kind of by mistake. I got it because I wanted to play with my own troops, and that was a way to do it. Not necessarily that I'm a tournament type player. I am competitive. I'm competitive anyways, but I'm interested in the narrative. And if you're playing something that's very abstract, the narrative sucks. If you're playing this, at least for me, it doesn't have the details that I want out of the story. So, and I can't tell you how relieving it is to be like, I'm going to do some Russian buildings. Okay, that's done in 2 or 3 hours. Let me go do some tanks or a figure. Not like, I got to paint 12 more cavalry and I got to do them in a month. I'm done with that. It just seemed like a lot of work. Now, they turned out great. It's not like I have a problem with how any of them turned out. But It's just time for something different. It's high time for something different. So I'm actually kind of curious to see how the tournament scene is going to deal with me not running stuff. I hope it does well, but I'm not banking on it. Just got tired of playing minority whip or majority whip, depending on what it is. Looking for people for votes. Hey, you gonna come to the show? When's the show? When's the fucking show? Always. It's always the last. It's always the last weekend of April. Always the last weekend of September. Getting people, rounding them up, and then they come up with excuses not to show up. It's fine. People have other real commitments, but I don't have to worry about that anymore. So we'll still go to cons. We'll still go to HistoriCon. Just not this year. I got to use the vacation days for something else. But I'm just going to go to play or hang out or shop or do videos, do walkthrough videos and stuff. Those are fun to do. I'm not opposed to doing videos. I just don't want to do videos for a rule set that I'm not supporting anymore. You know. Even though I have had many years enjoying DBX games, a local group has moved over to Impetus 2 and 15 mil. I'm really enjoying the larger diorama unit spacing, something I didn't get in DBX. Okay. Yeah, I'm not saying I have the rules. I actually have basic Impetus, and they're beautiful looking rules. I just don't have it in me to read rules anymore and then get them wrong, and that's not what the author meant. You know, it's very unsatisfying. If my group wanted to play Impetus 2 and they're willing to learn it, I don't want to, I just don't want to teach it. You know, it's not that I don't want to play by the rules. I just don't want to be playing by the rules that are, it's that difficult to freaking understand. But they do look good. More figures for me is a turn off because it's just more figures of the same thing. And I get it. It looks good, but the more detail something has in visually, at least to my mind, the more detail you put in and in creating the look or painting or the scale of it, in my opinion, the more detail the rules should have. So I think that I paint way too much detail into my DBA armies for the rules to be the way that they are. They're just too vague. You know, I want to do all the heraldry and all that stuff. That stuff's fun to do. It takes a long time, but it's fun to do because it's a learning process along the way. You get to learn, different shield patterns and who had them, and that kind of stuff is cool. I enjoy that. The problem is that it doesn't matter. Everybody's freaking knights are the same. Everybody's blades are the same, and I'm kind of done with that. And it's the same in Art de la Guerre. It's the same in other games that have spun off the DBA type thing. And I would require more different. Now, one thing that I do like about Impetus, just in looking at it, is not everybody's knights are the same. Now, Impetus seems to have just from what I gather, a love or hate relationship with it. Some people are like, oh, the rules are broken. I'm like, oh, well, I haven't played it, so I can't really come to that conclusion. But I don't care creating a scenario that's not necessarily balanced, that maybe the French win most of the time and their opponent doesn't. Because you can play the game a couple times and then compare how each side did, and that's your rule winner. Sometimes battles that aren't balanced are some of the best battles. You just can't be in the middle of a war. Oh, this isn't fair. You guys are using tanks, so we don't have anything against them. You got time to make milk out of a brick, man. You got to do the best you can with what you have. So, but Just play the scenario twice, switching sides. But I have the rules. I bought them. I printed them out. I thought about giving them a whirl at half scale because it's basically 4 times as big. So a unit of skirmishers, for instance, is 4 stands of 2 figures each, right? 2 deep and 2 wide. So I'm like, well, why can't I just have the ranges and then just use 1 stand? Because I just not I want to paint a lot of figures. I just don't want to paint a lot of the same thing when I could be painting different nationalities. As I get older, I have less patience and mental resources to spread across my hobby. So I'm really limited in what I play. I can only spread my resources so far. All systems have broken aspects. You just got to find something that resonates with you and enjoy it. And you have to play something, I think, that you're in control. If I'm playing a game and we're playing it locally, and there's something we disagree with, and we all disagree with, it's not like it's Tony's way or the highway. We pretty much don't have disagreements when we play with our group. I mean, we're all reasonable, knowledgeable players that are half intelligent, that we can figure out when something doesn't make sense. And if it's a tournament, oh, you got to play it the way the rules are. Fuck that. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not changing the rules to play to have an agenda or something. I'm changing them because it doesn't make any sense, and that's the way forward for me. If I'm playing an Ancients game and it has if it has really light troops that throw sticks or javelins or stuff, I'm going to call them skirmishers. I'm not calling them that PS name, which is silly, to try to put everything under it. So that's where I'm at right now. And with that said, I don't really have anything bad to say about DBA. I had many good years with it, but it's somebody else's time to run with that if they want to. But I just don't see it doing well in the States because, like I said, I pushed really hard the last couple years, and we had reasonable numbers here in Florida, but it just in the U.S., people are just too busy. There's just not the commitment. So, and that's fine. They can go do something else. I, I've had a really good time playing it, and almost everyone I have encountered has been a very pleasurable person to play the game with. Almost everyone. I think out of like 200 different opponents I've played over the years, maybe 3 of them I'd like to never see again on a battlefield. And it's just them. That's just the way that they are. So, and if I do work on ancient stuff, it will be still DBA 3.0 Army lists, because I am kind of working on my own thing. It won't be to publish anything for money. It's just to just kind of do it on my side. But my heart's just not in it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And it's getting really difficult to meet with the people that I used to meet with on a daily basis because their interests have kind of changed a little bit, or anyhow, so I'm having a ball though doing this. So I appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out together, and we could talk about whatever is. I'm not anti-ancients or anti anything else. I'm just like, I'm tired of being tortured with problems that can't be solved. I'm done. All systems have broken aspects, and a lot of it has to do with they're not play tested properly. There's just not enough play test done to them. There's several companies. I don't play any of their games, but there's several companies that their MO seems to be like, all right, we want to sell figures. So in other words, sell figures will sell rules that use our figures exclusively. So let's hurry up and get these rules out so we can sell figures. Like, shouldn't we like play test these more? Nah, just get them out there. And then they have, the rules just come out, and there's already an addendum to them. And then you're like, okay, well, what rules are we playing with? Well, print up the addendums on this page, and this one from the other, but play with this, but not with that. It's just like, I'm already tired. I haven't even started playing. Maybe maybe they cater to people that are unemployed or have an empty vacuum for a head, or those of us that have worked for a living, or we're just tired. It's not that we don't want a game that's complicated. We don't want a game that you're reading a sentence 3 times and you can't get right. Because I definitely am not interested in playing a game that's like checkers. We want some different random things that can happen. But I don't want to read something like 3 times and I can't figure out what it is. I mean, I'm not an idiot. So you guys need to word it a little bit better. So plan on running this kind of like a role-playing game. You know, everybody's running, a handful of folks. If I got 3 players, I don't think anybody needs to have more than 5 figures. And let's just see what happens. You have to take this building, or you have to take this town, or you need to go do this other thing, and it is what it is. So, Mr. Pomfret, enjoy the stimulating company. Yeah. Well, maybe you get to interact with someone that has your interest that you don't get to interact with on a daily basis. That's me. I can't talk about history or this stuff that is part of our lives with anybody else. So that's what I come here for. I swear I've been having this exact conversation over spring in my War Games group. Yeah. Well, if you've been doing this for a while, wargaming, which you probably have, most of you are about my age or 10 years older. That's what my normal demographic is. But as I like to say, I should have been born 10 years earlier than I was, because my sister is 14 years older than me. So it was kind of a mistake. But some people I work with will probably agree with that. But, my main demographics is about 10 years older than I am. So early 60s. And this is our historical reenactment. I don't want to dress up in wool and suffer in a tent. I already did time in the Boy Scouts. I already did 2 tours in the Boy Scouts. I don't want to sleep in a freaking tent. So this is the closest thing you can get to participate in history. And it's a way of being creative, of course. I still don't mind computer games, but I use them as motivation to do this. I don't see ever not painting things. It's just fun. It's just cool. And it doesn't really matter what period you're doing. The fantasy and the science fiction just never got into it. I'm just not interested in the narrative that provides. It doesn't do anything for me. There's just so many cool things, interesting things that happen in real life that nobody knows about, or most people don't know about, that is just a shame. You don't have to make things up. There's enough interesting things that are almost unbelievable, or fantasies of themselves, that you could be discovering. Just a couple little tools there. One thing I can't get over painting metallic things with gray instead of using a metallic thing. I've seen other people do it. They can pull it off. I'm not there yet. I still use a little bit of metallic on them. It's like this little... DT machine gun that's here. I'm going to paint it black and then... Oh, I said paint it black. Cue the music. Iron Breaker. No, we're not using Iron Breaker for that. We're using Iron Warriors. But I left World War II for 20 years. And there's all kinds of new stuff to learn about. Basically, I left when the internet was kind of in its infancy. So now I just have access to so much stuff that I didn't have to before. Like, oh, you know, paint schemes of such and such. And, you know, you get ideas from other people. Like, that, all that stuff wasn't available when I stopped doing World War II stuff. And it's not that I don't like books, but you know, there's lots of stuff that's in books that's incorrect. The counter scheme that the British used in the desert. I'm sorry, that the Commonwealth forces used in the desert. You know, used to have light blue and stuff in it. Now, apparently, the colors have been corrected. That's not the colors they used anymore. 20 years ago, it was. You know, so again, not a huge deal because, you know, when it comes to painting, you can paint things however damn well you please, you know, but it's just kind of interesting that our understanding of something that happened not so long ago, because in relative terms, World War II wasn't that long ago, and there was photography, and a lot of it still changes. So, and audiobooks, you know, people that are doing history programming on YouTube. There's some brilliant folks out there doing some history programming on there. You gobble that stuff up. Will the games be a platoon or company level? I don't think you can have a company on a side. That's just too many, you know, a full strength company. That's just too many figures. It doesn't work well if someone has more than 5 figures. So 20 figures on a side, 15 figures in a vehicle, 10 figures in 2 vehicles, that kind of stuff. I'm only painting all these vehicles because for different scenarios and, you know, they're fun to do. You could add more figures if, you know, the rules are actually pretty flexible. The way that you do activation, you could do activation by squad. You could do activation by fire groups. You could do activation by individual figures. I've always played with individual figures because the rules don't have opportunity fire, I don't think. And that really speeds up play, where you don't have like, I'm going to move across this street. Okay, back them up, move them here, and then you argue about opportunity fire really complicates things and slows things down. So if you do individual figure activation, you can drop a fire lane, and if somebody goes through there, they get hit by it or what have you. But if you do it by squad, like the whole squad crosses and nobody gets hit by the fire kind of thing, because it doesn't happen at the right time. So I wouldn't want to do activation by the squad. They even recommend in the rules that the way these rules are really shine is to do individual figure activation. So just to kind of give you at a glance is, you know, you've got most figures, most average quality troops will have 2 actions per turn. So if you have 10 figures on a side, they use cards. I absolutely detest shuffling cards and shuffling in general. So I write the name of the figure on. I use poker chips, but they're really noisy. But I'm going to go to these. So you're going to have these rounds, these wooden rounds, it'll have the name of the figure on them. So say you got Smith on there. And Smith will have 2 actions in a turn. And then you got Johnson that's in your squad, and he'll have 2 actions. And then you got whoever, and you've got 2 actions. And you take all these chits, and you put them in a bag, and you pull one out. And that's who gets to do their actions. Their action can be move, it can be shoot, it could be unjam a weapon, it can be climb a ladder, it can be, stuff that's easy to understand, things that are going to take one turn to kind of do, right? And that's what you can do. And then he's done, and then you pull another chit for people on both sides. So it moves slow. It is a slow action sequence. But, so there is a possibility that Smith could go twice in a row. It's not likely, but it could happen. And as there's less and less troops on the table, on both sides, it's more likely for that to happen. So you can have those moments like, remember from Band of Brothers, Lieutenant Spears, where he takes down the road and he's charging the 88 basically by himself. And everybody's like, what's this guy doing? Well, he got to go 3 times in a row, Again, those things aren't likely to happen, and they don't happen likely, but you don't know what order things are going to happen in. So that's kind of the gist. When everybody does their action, the turn's over, put everybody, you take the casualties out who happen to die that turn, and then you put them back in. And if you forget to take the casualties out, it doesn't matter, because when so-and-so comes out, I'm like, oh, he's dead, so just throw it out and he won't be back in again, kind of thing. The really interesting thing is the way vehicles and support weapons work when you have junior leaders. Now, junior leaders, like let's use a German squad because it's kind of easy to understand. You're going to have 2 leaders in here. You're going to have a squad leader and you're going to have their assistant squad leader. Assuming you have good quality troops, the squad leader generally has 2 actions, 2 leadership actions, and the assistant squad leader has 1. Those are also chits. That when I used poker chips, they were a different color. You're pulling out of a bag unseen, so the color of it doesn't matter. I just did them in different colors, so it's easy to see, oh, this isn't the squad leader's actual action, it's their leadership action. And what their leadership action means is they can activate someone within a certain radius of them that they have in line of sight, but it's not them. So like, let's say, for instance, you have a sergeant who their chit comes up. Well, that's what they can do. They can fire their submachine gun, or they can move somewhere else, or they can go and try to rally someone or something like that they can do. But when their leadership token comes up, someone within their radius that obviously is under their command can be activated by the sergeant to go again. So it's really handy to have a junior leader next to a support weapon, because a support weapon, let's say you have a machine gun. You got the machine gunner, and you got the assistant. The machine gunner could roll badly when it goes to do an attack, and it has some kind of a jam. You need someone to be able to unjam it. So if you've got a junior leader and his leadership comes up after you've unjammed the weapon, but both of the other guys, you tried to unjam it, but the other guys have already gone, he can activate one of them to try to unjam the weapon again, or ask him to fire the weapon again. It just, so you get to manipulate some of that stuff and the timing of it. But again, you don't know what order it's going to come in on. A bit of blind general, yeah. So that's the kind of games I actually like. I like chaos management. I don't want the game rules themselves to be chaotic, but I just want that you just don't know what you're going to do. So the game is slow in that you pull every figure, but when you're doing one guy and it's his turn to go, it's easy. Like, what are you going to do with that one guy? Well, I'm going to try to cross over to this corner, or I'm going to try to shoot. You're not worried about, well, how many guys can I get over here? You just try to do the best you can with the information that you have. So, and, all of my figures have surnames on them. This is a BAR gunner named Davis. you know. And I like that better than flipping over and who is that guy again? Or just a number. This is figure 23. I like that they have a surname on them. It just gives them some kind of personality, you know. And I have enough different figures that none of them are the same. None of them are in the same pose. So it's kind of like a role playing game. You're just role playing many different people at once. So I don't know if that helps you understand, but that's kind of the gist of the game. The other thing that's kind of unique about it is that I don't have any Russians out here, or whatever. It's played in actual scale. So if you've got this, is this guy a corporal? This is a corporal. Corporal Vila. Bob Vila, we used to call him. Spelled a little different. And he wants to throw a grenade. You know, it's not one of these, well, the grenade only goes this far kind of thing. No, the grenade, I mean, the scale of the game is an inch equals 2 meters, or what I like to call is a centimeter is a meter. That's compressed a tiny little bit, but it's almost actual scale. So, you know, you're throwing a grenade that could potentially go, you know, a foot away, a foot and a half away, that kind of stuff. You know, and it's got a blast radius. It's about that big. You know, and then you roll to see what kind of damage it does to people, you know. And it's all percentile, percentile is really easy to understand. You know, what are your chances to hit something? It's right there. It's not like, well, it's a 1 in 6 that translates into 17%. No, it's just easy. And, you know, it moves slow, but it's easy to understand. So anyways, I'm going to give them a shot. And something that I have not played a lot with vehicles. If something doesn't make sense, we'll change it. It's not like we're going to run it at a tournament. It'll be for the better. But just imagine how that happens in a tank. Okay? You're going to have a Panzer III. Okay? And you have a driver. You have a machine gunner. You got a loader, the commander, and the gunner. You know, the loader, he's got to put a round in. Well, it's going to start off with a round in there, right? So as soon as the gunner's turn comes up, he can fire, right? So he fires, it does whatever. Now the chamber's empty, and there's a little counter you put on there, you know, chamber empty or unloaded or whatever, right? His turn's over with. The loader's got to come up next. If the gunner comes up before the loader comes up, you know, he's going to do nothing. He's going to be like, well, he could fire the coax, okay? But he can't fire the main armament because the main armament isn't loaded, because the loader's sitting on his ass for 3 seconds and didn't put another round in. So maybe the commander comes up, his leadership comes up before the loader. The loader can say, hey, dumbass, put that freaking round in. So then the loader, on the commander's action, loads the gun. Okay? Then, whenever the gunner comes up or another commander action comes up, the gunner can fire again. And that's how you get increased. That's assuming you have a gun that can fire every turn. You know, because you could have something like the JS2 or whatever that takes multiple actions multiple time to fire the gun. But that's basically the gist of how you control your. So that's where a commander is really handy. Now, take that scenario we just did with the Panzer III and do it with a Czech 38. The Czech 38, the commander is the gunner. So when his leadership thing comes up, he can't get the gunner to fire again because he is the gunner, and you can't use that leadership on yourself. So then you can see how having a 3-man turret is a big advantage. He could still tell, hey, loader, load that damn thing up. But if you need an extra gunning action, he can't do it because he is the gunner. So, anyhow, I hope that helps illustrate a little bit of the inner workings of how it works. And that's how you can tell on this scale of a game the differences between a Panzer III and a T-34. If you play something like, Command Decision or Spearhead or most other games, you're just looking at mobility, armor, and penetration. And occasionally rate of fire. Some games have tanks can do multiple rate of fire, so some of that plays in. So in each one of those, this is a superior vehicle every time. But it depends on the crew. If you have a good crew in this vehicle, this is a better tank from a command and control aspect than the T-34 is. And that's why the Germans were successful in a lot of the stuff that they did. Not because they had better equipment, but because it was more user-friendly and they were better trained to work in it. Not in every situation, but in, that's how they did what they did with what they had. So, and turret rotation's a big deal. You got something that rotates turret, you tell your gunner he wants to rotate the turret, and depending on what it is, I think the most you can rotate a turret is 90 degrees in a turn, and that's if you have a really fast one. It's mostly like 30 and stuff. So it's a slow motion battle, but it should have some excellent narrative potentials. But again, you can't constrain it with like, okay, well, we got to get this done in 4 hours. Well, it might take 2 sessions. And, it's not going to be boring. It may be slow, but it's not going to be boring. One of the slowest games I've ever played in my entire life was, well, I've played many of them, but one of them happens to be a board game called Here I Stand. It's an excellent game that is slow as shit, and I wasn't bored for a moment. So that's the important thing. The important thing is that your audience is not bored. Because if they are, no matter how good the game is, it's a loss. It's a non-win. All right, so we're going to do tracks here, and we're going to use German camouflage black brown. So, which is one of the colors of the SS camo smock. Cinematic, exactly. And it's not for everybody. I admit most people aren't going to like that. But I've played other games that don't get into the inner workings of why things work the way they do. If I'm playing a World War II game, I want to play a game that helps me understand the way everything worked better. And playing something like Rapid Fire isn't going to do that. I'm not going to increase my understanding of the game. Now, like I said, it's not for everybody. You have to be a, World War II nut. And like I said, I'm fully prepared. I used the wrong brush. I'm fully prepared to solo the game. I'm okay with that. I'm building models at this point with the possibility of playing a game with them, as opposed to them just sitting on a shelf, building 1/35th scale stuff, knowing that you're not going to do anything with it. And having a lot of fun along the way. So, now there is one set of rules I picked up that is, it seems so complicated I don't even know where to start. It's called Final Combat, and it's almost like a role-playing game set in World War II, and it's got a lot of things in it that just aren't that important to me, like environmental stuff. And environmental stuff's important, but not if you like. That's not something you need to worry about right off the bat if you've never even played the game. You don't need to worry about rules for, falling snow when you're trying to wrap your head around, okay, how does regular combat work? So I have them, and I just, honestly, it's almost made my head explode. Like, I don't know where to begin. So I can't tell you if they're any good, but I've had them a long time, actually. but it's not going to be a company-sized game. And it might be one of those things that it might be trial and error. It might be one of those things that if we do a scenario on the Eastern Front and say everybody's, say 1941, and everybody's playing like Germans, right? We might use individual figure activation for the Germans, and then the Russians that I control move by squad. We just have to see how it works out, so that it focuses the attention on what the players are are making choices over. We'll just have to see. It's going to be a work in progress. So, but my main objective is to have a game that looks like those games that you guys salivate over on War Games magazines. There's nothing more motivating than seeing something from War Game Soldiers and Strategy or Miniature War Games or any of those that you see that they have these games that just look salivatingly good. So that's what my objective is. I don't want to just throw felt on there and call it a day. I want it to look good. So if you're going to have something that looks good, you might as well have something that doesn't require a ton of troops. And I better start working on this now, because waiting another 10 years to get back to my World War II roots, at some point I'm going to be too old to do this. And I think it's going to be more like I'm not going to want to do it because it isn't worth it, more than I got the shakes and I can't do it anymore kind of thing, if that makes any sense. And it's just, I should have been doing this all along. But one of the things I learned about DBA is, that I didn't know before I started, is DBA is the first game that I played where I was really conscious of, or I was really aware that I was role playing a certain commander in the field. So when you're playing DBA, you are not just some battalion commander. You are literally the king of the whole country. And that's the decisions you're making. So that's where that abstractness comes in. So a lot of people do these skirmish games, and they put a platoon on each side, and they're moving individual people like they're an assistant squad leader in a squad, and you're just role playing the wrong role. If you're moving, if you're playing the platoon commander, you need to be making platoon commander decisions, not moving individual soldiers. It's not compatible with each other. And it wasn't until I played DBA that I really kind of wrapped my head around that. That it's like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. I should not be aware and be able to need to worry about those kind of decisions. So if I want the detail of, I want this guy to throw a grenade, and then you roll to see where the grenade lands. And I'm telling you, that is an integral part of a skirmish game for me. If I'm playing a World War II skirmish game, I want to decide obviously it's limited grenades, where they land. Because when they don't land where you want them to is when the party starts. Okay? That is the interesting narrative. But when you're worried about those kind of details, you can't actually be commanding a platoon at the same time, because they're not really compatible. And it wasn't until I played DBA that I realized that made sense. That kind of stuff just never occurred to me. And it has to do because of the whole PIP mentality. You can't do everything you want. Well, why can't you? Well, because, you're commanding 10,000 guys and you're worried about what happens to 100. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. So, just some food for thought. A lot of it is stuff that You just, because you haven't put it into words or you haven't experienced it, it doesn't really click. So, like, this game is really well suited, I would think, to make everybody play French Resistance and go on raids or commandos. I don't say commandos because commandos weren't used all the time or in specifics. The French Resistance just really lends itself really well to that, where you can run like three guys, three people, because it could be women. And I've got some women resistance fighters, and they look pretty badass. But it really lends itself to doing that, and I have some, so that's on my to paint list. And they won't have surnames; they'll have their front name. They'll have their first name. You know. Yes, they will be a Jean Luc. Chill out. That's just, you know, it's going to write itself. But I didn't want to start with that because I want to do the Russian front stuff first to kind of get our feet wet. But that may be actually the way to do the enemy, is to have them move by squad and have everybody else move by the individual. In other words, you have the people play the more elite unit. Whoever's the most experienced, that's who the people play. you know, and then they can move individually so that you get that individual feel, and then everybody else moves by squad kind of stuff. And if it doesn't feel right, we'll then just do individuals for both. But it is as you say, a cinematic and a narrative driven game. Full of movie moments. And it's not for everybody, but it's what I want to simulate. It's what I want to see. You don't have to make anything up. It's happening. You don't have to go, well, this is probably what happened. Nope, you know exactly what caused it. I don't remember if I did a lighter, the chocolate brown on top of this as the highlight. I don't think I did. I should have. I'm just not going to do it. I would just skip a step. I got to cut some corners. I can't be the only person who doesn't cut corners. Let's take a look at this turn on here. So hopefully that helps you understand where I'm coming from, what my goals are. If I recall correctly, that's what I liked about Sea Creek. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the first game I played a lot. And I accept no compromises when it comes to World War. And the thing is you just, and that's why I don't play Sea Creek at a convention. Because they try to squeeze this scenario into a 4-hour session, because our conventions are forcibly only 4 hours long each session. You can't play Sea Creek in 4 hours unless you have experienced players playing something like River Plate. You just can't. And it's not boring. by any stretch of the imagination. And an unfinished game is a loss as far as I'm concerned. It's unsatisfying to not come to a complete conclusion. But yeah, that's exactly what I like about Sea Creek. You know, there's a set of rules that is available free. I want to say the website is called freewargamerules.com, or it's something generically described like that. And it's an unfinished set of ship rules called Fire on the Waters. And this author, and I don't remember what his name is, had a unique way of going about it, and he used different types of dice that would simulate different things as you went along. And it's kind of, it's not as detailed as Sea Creek, but it's only maybe one step back. And it had some things that Sea Creek didn't have. Do I still have that dice thing? Let's see. I think I looked for it a little while ago. I gotta find this because this is really innovative. Let's see if I can find this here. I don't know why I would have done such a good job of hiding it, but apparently I did. And I'm only gonna look for it for a little bit, and if not, but I can describe it to you. But man, it's a lot easier to show than describe. I did come across at one point, and I was like, well, this is in the wrong place, but I will take one of these to kind of illustrate something. And this is actually the counters for the Face of Battle that you can pre-print, and they're actually nice looking counters and everything. Here's the movement markers. Here's the movement things for, this is as far as you can move. You know, when you get a jam or you get a reload thing, you put a little reload counter next to your figure. So they're actually nice looking counters. But anyhow, so these set of rules for Fire on the Waters, you know, you'd use like a D10 to see if the shell came close. And then if it did, within a certain parameters, then it would be another dice that would do something else. So I created, I don't know what I did with it. I have a small subdivided thing like this that's opaquely clear, okay? And it's in different, I found one that had the right number of containers, and I have a dice in each one. So what you do is you shake it, and you put it down, and then you read left to right. So you've got one that shows you if the shell came close. So if this number is really high, don't look at any of the other ones. Move on to the next ship. So at a glance, you can tell, oh, okay, it landed close. It's a hit. It hit the hull. It penetrated. It did water damage. It started a fire. And here's your critical roll. All in one thing. That was my creation part of it. And it worked really well. What didn't work really well is that all the ship data and stuff on the ships was incomplete, which actually is a fun thing for me to do because I've got a lot of resources for that. But, and there was a way to simulate flooding within the ship so you could physically see, oh, you hit this compartment, that one's full flooding, that's where the ammo is. I can't get the ammo to the aft guns because it's flooded. So you got to see like a visual representation of what was really happening. But the innovation of it is I didn't come up with a dice that did it. I came up with they're already there, so you're not like, okay, which die this is, just to speed up the process. It's okay for a game to go slow and take a long time to resolve a hit if it was actually a real hit. It's annoying to have a game that takes a long time to go through a ship's turn when you know that it didn't even hit another vessel. If that makes any sense. There's no point in slowing down the game. You know, it's like if you're watching a naval game, right? A naval game. I have several of them on a computer. You know, and you slow it down to where a hit comes in. You want to see the effects. You don't want to slow down everything for a miss. So it's good to have a game that has, okay, this is close enough to worry about it, see if there's a hit, instead of like, oh, that one just went wild. Just move on to something else, you know? So, anyhow, but I had the rules and I played a couple games with it and it seemed to be okay. It wasn't Sea Krieg. You know, the problem with Sea Krieg is it takes a long time. It takes a long time to play. And I've played it, and I'm not going to mention any names because I don't know their names, but I played with some people, and they're just, when you're playing a game like DBA, everybody, one person is just as involved in the battle as someone else. You're playing a game like Sea Krieg, you could just be shelled. You could be getting shelled, and you're a small ship and you're not within range. There's nothing you can do about it. It's not a whole lot of fun or interactive for that player that's just being shelled and not being active. So that's the problem with a game like Sea Krieg, is that you don't have complete involvement of all parties equally. And that's kind of a unique thing about DBA, is that, you know, I'm attacking you. Okay, well, I get to roll as well. You know, one person is rolling just as many dice as someone else. And I think that's one of the things that creates better attitudes in playing the game. Because there's nothing worse than, man, you're winning and you're doing all the damage to me and I'm bored. You know, you can get the I'm bored aspect out of DBA. There is no I'm bored in DBA because you're just as involved as the other guy. And you're rolling just as many dice. So it wasn't until I played DBA that I realized that, oh, okay. There's really nothing worse in a game than to be bored. Other than to play against, say, maybe some asshole that wants to, you know, ridicule you. But most people are most people are reasonable. And, you know, most people are reasonable. So that's usually not the case. But you want to keep both players involved equally. You know, we're like, I don't want to play this anymore. Why? Because all I did was sit around and not do anything. I played a naval game one time. Mitch and I were at a convention. I'm like, I gotta play this guy's game. There's a guy named Bob Moon who runs some great games at our shows. I think he's from Jacksonville. But the problem with Bob Moon is he does periods I'm not interested in. So he's heavy into American history stuff, which, as I said before, I don't really care for. So he'll do like ACW, French and Indian War, stuff like that, you know. And he's a beautiful painter, and his boards are gorgeous. And you look at him and like, I want to play that because it looks great, but I'm just not interested in that period. So there was a show maybe 5 or 6 years ago that I talked Mitch, hey, let's go play this. It's a naval game. It's ACW. It might be fun to play on the same side because I'm always fighting against the bastard. I'm like, it might be fun to play against the same side, and we'll enjoy this game together. And Bob Moon's and his ships looked beautiful. I mean, they were big ships, like the ironclads were like, you know, this size. So whatever size that one might have been. 1/100 scale or 1/200 or something. They were really big. And when it goes to pick sides, and I'm like, we want to play Confederates because I want to spend the entire game making a Confederate accent and just being silly, you know. I want to talk like an inbred son of a bitch the whole game. I did. I had a lot of fun with it. But the game was a broken game and not a fun game because the mechanics in the game were that you could fire at the beginning of your turn before you moved or after you moved. And our ships were casements, you know, so you could only fire to the side. So what would happen is, our ships were here, and the enemy was here at the beginning of the turn. This being like the front of the ship. Let's see if I can. You guys can get the angle of it. So my arc is out here. My arc is out here at the beginning of the turn, and then I would move, and now I'm not in arc again. So I didn't get to fire at all, because there's nothing in the game that allowed me to fire between the middle of the turn, and you moved so much each turn that it wouldn't be unusual to be out of arc, move within it for most of the turn, but at the end of the turn be out of it again, and you didn't get the fire. So we just sat there, got shelled, and didn't get to do anything. So the game sucked. Not because we didn't win, but because we were basically just sat around, we were like a brick wall that was getting shelled. A failed rule system. When you have something that's a failure, that dramatic, the very first time you play a game, that's just a game that just hasn't been play tested enough. I don't think it was his rules. It was, whatever he picked up and decided to use, but that's no fun for one side. I didn't get to roll any dice. Who wants to do that? So, those type of games aren't fun. Not because you didn't win, but because you could have stayed home and gotten the same amount of stuff done. So, the people that are playing the game need to be have some ownership in it. Otherwise, they'll just be bored. And it could be from it taking too long to get back to the other person's turn. Just consider this little skirmish scenario I was telling you about. Anybody could go next. So everybody's sitting at the edge of their seat hoping their card comes up, hoping their turn comes up. And you don't know who it is. And remember, their action gets done and they don't go back in the bag until the end of the turn. So if you act too soon, it's bad, because all kinds of things are going to be happening around you, and you can't do anything. So I don't know if that helped understanding kind of where I was coming from, but DBA was very influential for me for many reasons, and it made me see some things that maybe I wouldn't have seen had I not played it. So, it's not like I wasted 18 years. It's not like I didn't have any fun along the way. It's just really frustrating at this point. It's like, okay, why, after playing this game so many times and looking at the rule book, why am I still having the same questions and questioning the same stuff? Okay, I think we're ready to move on to dry brushing this guy. What's the high today going to be? It might be too cold to spray. Well, I'll still spray. I just got to go really light. That's the only problems I've actually had with spray painting is you go too heavy, and somehow it wants to interact with the paint that's underneath. I'm going to use the cardboard because I'm a lot happier with a cardboard than using a napkin. So we got US Field Drab. Anyway, so that's my monologue. I always think it's funny when you got somebody who's even older than I am. I'm not that old. I don't think I'm that old. And they're like, I've never played any World War II games before. And that's all we used to play. But they're probably thinking, well, why haven't you played Napoleonics before? I came across, who was it that did it? I want to say it was somebody who made terrain mats, and they had written this article that started along with something along the lines of, and here's this battle for history's most famous battle. And if you say that to me, you're going to have a different response than this person had. Because they were saying it was for Battle of Waterloo, history's most famous battle. I'm like, if somebody says, what's the most famous battle? I'm not saying Waterloo in the first 5 choices because I'm not a Napoleonics player. It just wouldn't occur to me. So, people play different things for different reasons. I would not put Waterloo as the most famous battle. I've only played the battle one time, and relatively recent. But I'm not a Napoleonics player. So it's funny when somebody says, I'm just getting into World War II, and it's somebody who's been wargaming for a while. I'm like, what the hell have you been doing then? Because that's what we started with. But, I grew up watching World War II movies. It's relatively recent in that, I've met several veterans that were in it. And it's a good combination of brute force and technology, where they're both important. You go older than that, and it's more brute force than technology. And you go more modern than that, and it's on almost all technology. So I always thought it was a good compromise between the two, and Nazis just make excellent adversaries, and communists, It kind of has all the things, but I grew up watching World War II movies. And there's so many more now than when I grew up with, so this is just US Field Drab. And this is one of there's 3 shades that are there's 3 colors that are in the basing of this temperate material, of this temperate colored base. And this is one of them. This is the middle shade. So I'm not putting the darkest shade on here, which is chocolate brown. I'm just putting the middle one and the lightest one. And that way the vehicle feels like it's part of the environment that's on the base. I mean, that is one of the reasons you put it on a base, right? So that you can see what it looks like in its natural environment. And, other reasons as well, but that is a reason. At least that I put them on a base. And, all the figures on a base, so it makes it there's some consistency to it. Not everywhere, but just some differences. And how's this one? They don't have to be equally dirty. Don't forget the turret. and different people are interested in different things. I've never played medieval or ancients before 2004. I just hadn't got around to doing it. I had played some American Civil War against my wishes. That's one of the big things that the local game group that used to meet at the hobby store used to play, and just never took a liking to it. Never. I would have liked Napoleonics, I think, had it not been done in 6 millimeter scale, but don't really have any experience doing that. There's some folks that used to play Napoleonics way back in the day, and they just didn't seem like they were having a lot of fun while they were playing the game. I think it's a people issue, not necessarily the rules, but yeah, see, you got to be careful. See, I just clipped that, and I got paint on it, and I don't want to transfer that paint somewhere else that I don't want the paint to be. Okay, so now we do the same thing with a lighter shade, which is Iraqi sand. That's why I didn't want to do it directly on here, because when I'm done with it, I can be like, okay, paint, go away and go somewhere else that I'm not going to, trip it up. Six of you, good morning. Or good afternoon. Good, yeah, early afternoon for the British cousins. I can't say my British cousins because I'm not related to them, but our British cousins. And we're just going to go light on this. Especially catching the edges and stuff so that that kind of stuff stands out. It doesn't look like just a green blob. Well, what makes the game interesting is that you have meaningful decisions to make each turn. If you have a game where either you don't have a lot of choices or it's kind of obvious what your choice is every single game turn, I don't think it's a very fun game. And that's one of the strengths DBA has, is there's always meaningful decisions to make every single turn. Always. It is a good leadership invoking game from that standpoint. Good afternoon, cousin. The project is progressing nicely. Enjoyed your paper building videos too. Yeah, I was so worried about that, Jack, about making the wrong decision, and that just holds us back. That holds all of us back. Some of us more than others. That analysis paralysis. I'm afraid to make a mistake. You know, it, we've all been doing this long enough. We should just slap on paint, so to speak, and paint our way out. We can all handle it. But you just get into, writer's block while you're writing a paper for school or whatever that just would drive you crazy. Instead of just start throwing shit on there and it'll all sort its way out. You overthink stuff. And that's what held me back from ever doing them. And they turned out okay. We'll see how they look on the games table. But I'm I'm trying to make sure that that has less of an effect on us than it has in the past. But man, it just always seems like it's just this fear of making a mistake. When honest to God, we just I don't make that many. I don't make things that I'm unhappy with at the end of the day. It just doesn't happen anymore because you see how it's progressing as you're doing it. And like, this isn't turning out how I want it to, and you can make corrections along the way. It's not like you're blindfolded, and then when you're done, you take the blindfold off, and you're like, this is horrible. This is not what I envisioned. And I'm trying to get better about that. I'm sure all of us have some kind of a degree to that to some point, but, you know, I'm trying to get the main MO moving forward now is going to be don't buy shit and not do anything with it. Like, I bought these Panzer 3s, let's do some Panzer 3s. You know, not like I'm going to buy them and just set them on a shelf. I've got plenty of those things. That's happened in all our lives. You know, that's extremely unsatisfying. That's just a waste of resources. You know, you could be buying something else that you're using instead. You know, and my fear with the vehicles was that I had a vision of how I wanted the vehicles to look in respect to the figures, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to achieve that without painting 20 or 30 of them in a way that I wasn't going to be happy with, and that hasn't happened. But you know, I've added 20 years of painting experience since the last time I messed with World War II stuff, and there's lots of folks online that show that have examples of how they do things. And just about everybody has some good ideas or maybe something unique to bring to the table. And then you can kind of extrapolate from that how you would like to proceed them, you know. And it's funny when you run into people who, you know, you think are at some level way above your skill set. And then they worry about stuff you don't worry about at all. Like there's a guy that does 1/35th scale stuff. And I don't know if it's Plasmo or it's somebody else, but his vehicles look better than a real vehicle. I mean, they really are amazing. This guy is, and he had never painted a figure. Like he was, at least he said he was generally worried about putting a commander figure because he didn't know how to paint figures. And it's like, dude, how could you be worried about that? I mean, you're like doing rust stains and all this kind of stuff, and your vehicles look better than a real vehicle. A real vehicle looks like, you know, a fake vehicle next to yours. How could you be worried about that? And it's just one of those, you know, the unknown. But after you've been doing painting, war game, whatever, for a while, you have a clue. You know, you have a clue. We know how to fix things along the way. It took me 35 years of painting before I decided to do a backdrop for any of my figures. And I'm telling you, the backdrop took me 10 minutes to do. And I'm like kicking myself. Like, I could be doing like art for my house and shit like that all along. But you know, you have this worry, this, you know, of screwing it up. And it keeps you back from enjoying life. Analysis paralysis. All right, let's see how these two little commie boogers look. All right, now I gotta step away from them. I'm just too close. They look fucking excellent. Now, let me compare it to the other T-34 that I was happy with. Yeah, and they look equivalent. Yeah, I'm really happy with them. Well, they'll change a little bit, and they usually change for the better when I seal them, and I go really light on the sealant because you can screw things up with a sealant. And that's where I leave them at. I could do rust stains and all. You can take things too far. And then the figures need to kind of have all that stuff as well, or the figures look cheapy. You know. Yeah, the lighting is weird here. It's hard to get. It changes a lot. This light is super super powerful, but you'll see. We should have pictures of them up by the end of the day. Now, to make sure that we get these guys based on the end of the day, I'm going to go ahead and and do the stands. So we make sure that they're done as well. We painted the base color on them last night, which this is the chocolate brown, Vallejo chocolate brown. And there's one more, as soon as I can find it. And we're gonna go ahead and bring these guys all the way up. Know the feeling. I make a lot of card buildings from a model railroad. It's very unforgiving. A cut in the wrong place or piece is not glued correctly, and the whole kit is. The guys that do model railroads, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable stuff. You said model railroad, and the first thing I thought of is I saw an article recently about Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart was into model railroads a lot, or probably still is. And he has this huge railroad that I think he did all of it himself. If he did all the painting on it, that's why I would want to meet him. Not because he's a rock star, but because he's a modeler. But some of the guys that do that stuff is just, it looks better than real life, you know? It's approaching midnight here, so I'll say adios. Okay, well, we'll see you tomorrow morning there, Jared. Or maybe later on today. Thanks for coming by. Midnight in the land of Oz. What brush are we going to use? We've got to use a brush that does not mind being molested, because unfortunately this is brutal on them. But we'll use a cheapo one that's already been abused. Yeah, the model railroad stuff is amazing. My dad was really into model railroad, but one of the things I didn't like about my dad, I don't want to talk bad about him, but nobody's perfect. He was extremely competitive in that. I don't have a problem admitting that somebody's better at something than I do, because we can't all be the best at everything that we do. And he was an incredible artist. Like, if you're like, Dad, draw me a shark, or draw me that stuff like that. Was incredible. But I could outpaint the shit out of him. And he just like couldn't admit, I don't know. It just seemed like he didn't give me enough credit, so I didn't get a whole lot of positive reinforcement from them doing this hobby. I got it from my peers and my own, whether I liked it or not. I'm going to use this one. I don't care if this one gets destroyed. We'll just use another one for the... No. This one's been good to me. You've been good to me, pal. So like my daughter is... So I try not to do that. My daughter is incredible when it comes to watercolors. I mean, watercolors are extremely unforgiving. And it's the opposite of how I paint. I paint dark and move up. And watercolors is the opposite. You paint everything light, and then you do the dark stuff. So I try to, be, very supportive of what she does, because it really is pretty amazing. But I am certain that a lot of that is genetic. You know, you're either a painter or you're not. And you know, along the way, you can have things that can reinforce you sticking with it, or you know, you move in a different direction. Music's the same way. I'm not. I don't have the music gene. I don't. I just, you know. So, and the internet really helps those of us that are really interested in something like this to refine our skills even more. As I'll go and I'll look at people that are wizards that do this stuff, and I don't go like, oh, I can't do that. I'm gonna go play video games. I'm like, all right, Tony, time to step up your game. You know, I find it, you know, a challenge because I know it's a trick. Although I can see how it could, you know, discourage people. Like when you see that this is the same base color that we used here. This is the first dry brush shade. And then we're going to do the Iraqi sand on it as well. I could see where it could discourage people that, you know, you get tempted by this Games Workshop art that's on it. Oh, I'm never going to be able to live up to it. But Model Railway is fixed thing, so a huge amount of realism can be achieved. As wargamers, our tabletops have to be constantly changed. We accept that to play the game. Yeah, there's a guy that had an article. I had it saved for a long time. The worst thing about the model railroad layout is dust. My dad always wanted to have a working train layout, and we kind of half-ass achieved it in one house, but then when you move from it, you got to take it all down. The problem is while it's there, it's just collecting all kinds of dust all the time. We had it at the time in the garage, which of course is an unpleasant place to have it in, because in Florida, garage is the last place you want to spend any amount of time in, unless you're, you know, you're a sadist for, you know, hot weather. But it's collecting dust and, you know, bugs that come along and die on the train layout, you know. So that's kind of inconvenient. But this one guy had created this article in one of this railroad magazine, and he had created this game where he had a file card for each box load, and it would describe it on it. It would even, I think he even had a picture of it. Like he went like full on doing this, and he had it laminated. So he would have, you know, Great Northern box car X340, whatever the description of it was, and he had this game where he would shuffle the loads, and he would deal himself out of hand, and he had to get these loads on one train all put together and to go out of town or whatever. And so it was random, so he had to connect and disconnect or whatever. So he kind of made a game out of it, and I thought, well, that would be kind of cool to do that. But you know, you can't obviously uncouple them yourself. You have to use the uncoupler, and you know, we had some HO scale stuff, and I actually have a few engines, but you know, my brother got those. I don't have time to do everything, so. But yeah, there's some real wizards out there that I just don't want to do static stuff you don't do anything with, you know. But yeah, train layouts here in Florida, you know, you have them in the garage, and then you got to clean the tracks because they get, you know, some mild corrosion, and it doesn't work really well, and they get stuck, and that's known as the Inglenook puzzle, a shunting game that can be played. Yeah. Kind of like that puzzle you have, right? That has like a description of, you know, it might have like a design on it, and there's one little block missing, and you got to move this one all the way over here, so you got to move all these out of the way to, yeah, just something to kind of do all that. Man, I just thought it'd be cool. You have a train layout, and you could have like a one with some German engines that have like loads of like Panther tanks or something, and you had to move them around. But you know, we have a limited amount of time to do this stuff, so you kind of have to pick. Well, what am I really going to focus on? You know, if I'm gonna focus on playing board games, then I can't do miniatures. This that I'm doing right now is therapy. This makes me feel better. This is exercise for my soul. So I got to do this because this you have something to show for it. Even if I don't ever play with these, which I don't think is going to be the case, but I need to get this out of my system, so to speak. So I need to have the creative aspect because anybody can play a video game. You know, there's always going to be somebody better at you playing a video game. So, and I like them, but you know, after a while, you find something wrong with it. No matter how good it is, you know, you'll be like, "What's that vehicle doing there? They didn't have that at that time." What did I? So playing the game the other day, and I'm like, they gave me a Panzer IV-D, right? And it had the double opening doors on the side of the thing. I'm like, that ain't a Panzer IV-D. That's an F1. Stop the, you know. You're always gonna find errors and stuff in there if you know too much about a subject. Didn't know it was an Inglenook puzzle. Sounds like a clothing brand. Inglenook. Might be. Or a type of whiskey. It reminds me, I got one I haven't opened up. My wife gave me a bottle of scotch and I haven't opened it up yet. I don't really drink though. I certainly wouldn't drink while doing this. I need to have caffeine. I had a guy that used to come over, the original Mitch wasn't named Mitch, but he lived in town and he came over every Wednesday to paint. Sometimes we'd have a beer. Sometimes we had a second or a third one, and then it was like, just forget painting, you know. Alcohol doesn't motivate me to be creative. It's the opposite. It's like, you know, I just don't care, you know. It's not important. Not important to be productive when I'm drinking. But I rarely drink. Which is a shame because I'm a hell of a lot more fun. Oh man. And have a hell of a lot better attitude. I was talking to somebody the other day. I don't know anybody who gets angry when they have alcohol. I guess I'm fortunate. I know all the right people. Maybe they're just filling me full of shit. Just like I don't know anybody who gambles and doesn't do well. All of a sudden, everybody ever tells me about, oh yeah, I won such and such money at the casino. Sure you did, pal. That's why they're going out of business. Everybody's a winner. So again, this is the same shade here. And I had to come up with kind of my own system of how to do this because you don't want to do this after the vehicle's mounted in there because you can't get underneath. You can't get underneath the vehicle, you know, to reach the stuff. So what I do is I bring this up. Sometimes I do this slash shade. Sometimes I just do it at this stage. And kind of cut it out so that it sits flat on the plastic and the goop goes a little bit over the edge, and that's worked pretty well for me, you know. Booze and modeling doesn't mix too well. Might look good at the time, but next morning, oh dear. Yeah, it depends how much you're drinking too. I'm a pretty light. I'm really good at controlling my intake and being able to drive away from a situation at any point. I don't go like, man, how am I going to get home now that, you know, I've had too much. Like when I go war game on On days where I have to go to work the next day, I usually don't have anything to drink because it makes me sleepy, you know. And the last thing I need to do is get sleepy and then drive home. Forget about being inebriated. That's easy enough to to control and not go over that limit. But I got to go to work the next day, and it's not so much I'll feel like crap. It's I'm going to be tired and I might oversleep my alarm kind of thing. And I started wargaming when I was around 16, so I didn't drink and play games. So I don't really coordinate the two things together. Alcohol is better used, in my case, for situations where you don't want to be in that situation. So let me have a drink. Not like I'm doing my favorite thing ever, so let me have a drink kind of thing. So I don't need to be loosened up when I'm wargaming, which is like the most fun thing ever. One of them, anyways. All right, this is the BT7s. They're a little bit longer. And this is kind of what we're aiming for. Obviously, it has no little happy grass on there. And they are on magnets, so if I have to transport with them, they can fit somewhere. And that helps grab them too, so you don't get all this stuff all over your hands if you don't need to. Okay, so those are done. I'm not going to glue them on the stands until these are sealed. So let's start on the BTs. Put this away. We've got two BT7s. One of them in particular, I've got a decal set that I saw that has some white bands painted across the roof. So we're going to do one of those that way. Doing World War II for the first time and gone down the Flames War route. 15 is a new scale for me too. Yeah, when I was doing World War II, 15 millimeter didn't exist for World War II. It just didn't. You either did micro armor or you did 1/72 scale. 28 millimeter didn't exist either for World War II. We're talking about late 1980s. The first 15s that came out that I remember seeing is Old Glory, maybe in combination with Skytrex. Maybe I'm incorrect, but they came out with the Command Decision packs, and that was the first 15s I ever heard of for World War II. Now I'm sure there was probably others, but and so I never did any 15s at all of any kind until I started doing DBA in 2004. Okay, we're going to open this up a little bit because this is rubbing too hard on here. And I think this is a case of when I added that Agrax Earth Shade, it just added enough friction. It just didn't turn evenly enough. And we don't want to have that problem because we don't want to scrape up our handiwork. Let's see if we can get in here with a sandy bit of some sort. You may just go the Tony way. Well, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I do things a certain way for a certain reason. It may not be the right reason, but I was up in the air a lot. I didn't know there's advantages to not basing them. This looks right on whatever the terrain mat you're using. But if you're using the same terrain mat, then that's kind of a moot point. I just think it's consistent with the figures. The figures are going to be on stands. These are on stands. It adds a little bit of the look of what kind of terrain it's in. And some vehicles need it. None of these do. But any of those that have like the plastic tracks, you don't want them to be constantly, they can fall off and they can get damaged. So they're a lot better off on stands, those vehicles, like I said, these don't need it. These would be just fine like that. And the added benefit is, you know, you could travel with them if you need to. You know, you could put them in something and go from there. So I've just decided to go that route. The field is very mixed on that one. That is a, I don't want to say controversial because that's the wrong word, but people have really strong feelings about whether they put them on stands or not. And they're playing pieces, so I don't mind them being on stands at all. It doesn't bother me one bit. There we go. We're just going to take this spray paint off, which just thickened this just a hair where it's catching, because it wasn't this difficult to turn when I built them. But we got to watch that barrel. These barrels are very fragile. With all the infantry and artillery on bases, so bases for vehicles make perfect sense. So here's a dilemma I have. And I'm certain I'm going to come up with the right decision for me. If I have something like an anti-tank gun, what do I do? Because I don't want the figures glued on there. Because you could, like, one could come under fire and one of the guys could be killed. I want to be able to take the figure off. Or maybe he wants to run off somewhere. So I think what I'm going to do is not base the anti-tank guns at all and put the figures in around them. And if that's not durable enough, then I'll make a base that just the anti-tank gun goes on. And then I can move the figures in and out. I think it's going to be one of those two things. So the easiest thing is to not base them at all and just see how that works. If they're too flimsy, then, you know, may not go that route. Take that little piece off and then this little piece off as well and see if that makes a difference. It's getting better. It's getting better. I don't have a problem with them being difficult to turn. I just don't want to turn it and scrape up the nice paint job I put on them. Let's see if that does the trick. There we go. I'm comfortable with that. All right, let's check out the other one. We might as well solve this problem now while we got our head in the right place. And of course that one has a different turret. And they're all interchangeable. So the turrets from the T-26s fit on the BT-7s. This is really the early BT-7 turret. I actually prefer the conical one, which is usually called either a BT-8 or a 7M. But that's not what these kits came with, so. Where is the other turret? Oh, that's right. Boy, I'm a moron. All right, let's do the same thing. Let's scrape this thing clean. You're no expert on the period, different models and variants of tanks. If it looks like a Sherman, then it's a Sherman. Yeah, and if you're playing something, you know, you may be playing a rule set where it treats all the Shermans the same. You know, I think it's an opportunity to learn about the period. Shermans can be really confusing. Which variants one used, and you building a certain army for Flames of War, or are you just building all kinds of different stuff? I was looking at an article, I think yesterday, where they were trying to iron out the insignia that the Commonwealth tanks used. I mean, along with the armor division markings, you know, the unit of service badges, and it's just, man, it's just confusing as shit. Even for somebody who's, I would say I'm a World War II nut, it's still confusing. And I'll be honest with you, the Flames of War website is actually, even if you don't play Flames of War, which I don't, it has some really good articles that are easy to process to kind of get you going in the right direction, and then maybe you can do a deep dive into something else. But I feel like if you're going to do a deep dive into some subject matter, you need to kind of have some basics down. And a lot of the Flames of War stuff is really helpful, I think, for that. Like, you know, if you want to do, you know, British tanks in Italy, which is kind of a forgotten theater as far as wargaming goes. You rarely see anybody do Italy. You know, you can go on there and it'll tell you which army tank brigades were there, which armor divisions were there, what, you know, what symbols they used, you know, that kind of thing. So I'd like to do Italy at some point. It would be helpful if I like these paper buildings because they make Mediterranean buildings that would be appropriate for Italy. Whereas 3D printed, they don't do a lot. They do lots of stuff for Normandy, a lot of stuff for Normandy, and they do a fair amount of Russian front stuff. But Italian buildings, they just really don't do a lot of them. And some people say, you know, well, you know, Italy is an infantry war. Well, that's perfect because this is an infantry game. You know, I'm going to have some vehicles in it, but, you know, it doesn't need to be, you know, we're not going to have all these on the field at once. You know, like I've got 3 Czech 38s. I think I got one scenario that has 4 of them in them. But, you know, Czech 38s don't operate with Panzer IIIs because they either had one or the other. There's only a couple of Panzer divisions. I'm only talking about Barbarossa. I don't care about France. For reasons I'm not going to go into. And it doesn't have to do with the fact that it has the French in it. That actually is an appealing part of it for me. But I'm aware the different guns carried caliber, easy 8s. Yeah, just doing Normandy, June to August, U.S. versus Germans. I'm also going to do North Africa with British, Italian, and the DAC. I know I'm going to get to North Africa at some point. Well, I have no infantry for North Africa bought. So that's the downside to that. Honestly, I'm not looking forward to painting the Africa Corps vehicles. I'm not. The British ones, yes. The Italian ones, yes. Africa Corps, I'm not a fan of German tanks being sandy colored. I don't know. I'll paint one and I'm sure it'll come out great and I'll be like, I'm a fool for thinking that. But the desert's great because both sides are really interesting. Both sides are really interesting. So, okay. Batushka time. BT time. Okay, so this has the Russian green on it. It's spray painted black. Well, spray painted where I could, and then I got in with the primer and got black. So it's black overall, dry brushed heavily. Heavily meaning in most places with the Russian green, and then Agrax Earthshade. So now we're going to go back Here's my Russian green one on the other side. I really can't flip this thing over because it still has some wet paint. So I'm going to put it here, and we're going to dry brush Russian green on there again. So we get some free modulation out of it. The only thing I don't like about this method is I have to wait for the Agrax Earth shade to dry, which can be a bit long sometimes. Yeah, I did some Shermans because Shermans don't get much love. Not that I actually don't like playing Americans. I'm already American, and I like the role play a little bit. So I'm not one of those people that's like, it's gotta have Americans in it, or nobody's gonna be interested in playing it. Like, you know, you need to learn a little bit more about history to have that attitude. I'm definitely not one of those. It's gotta have Americans in it, or I'm not interested. That's I'm actually quite the opposite. Like, it's got Americans in it, I'm kind of not interested in it. We're going to need a little bit more substance to it than that. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because my people aren't necessarily represented. I mean, my family had not made it to the United States during World War II yet. So, but it's mostly of, one of the things I enjoy about gaming is doing funny accents, whether they're appropriate or not, or whether they're good or not. I still do better than most people, or want to. And it's just no fun to do an American accent. At least for those of us that are native speakers of American. So I'd rather do something else, you know? I've never seen, growing up, I'd never seen that TV show called Rat Patrol because it wasn't available. And I noticed that, like, all the episodes are on YouTube. So I started watching one the other day because somebody had recommended it to me. And I just happened to search and saw that it was available. And it's unwatchable. It's just unwatchable now. I'm just knowing what I know. And just like, what are Americans doing in the damn desert, man? That should be long range desert group stuff, you know? Like, why you gotta make something and forcibly put Americans in a situation they shouldn't be in just so the audience can relate? I'm not one of those, you know? Like I said before, when they came out with that Greyhound movie, if you're gonna make a movie, about the Battle of Atlantic that's based around a destroyer, it's gotta be a Commonwealth destroyer. I mean, before the Americans got into the Battle of the Atlantic had been going on for 3 freaking years. You know? And besides, Commonwealth destroyers are a lot more interesting. They're painted a lot more interesting. They got better names. You know, the Commonwealth and British ship names are awesome. Big fan. You know? Big fan of that. And sometimes they could be awesome names, and sometimes they could be ironically awesome names. Like, you could get your ass kicked by a destroyer called the Dainty. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, you know? They're adjectivical names. I like that. Big fan. You're the same in Napoleonics. I prefer the years prior to Waterloo, pre-British. Yeah, Austrians. Man, I love me some Austrians. Yeah, and you're British, so it makes sense that you wouldn't want to play British. Not it's not anti-nationalistic. It's just you're already British, so let's role play a little bit. But we're probably the exception. Most people want to play. I remember I was playing a micro armor game many years ago, many years ago, probably in the late '80s, early '90s. It was nothing newer than '91, and it was we were playing Combined Arms, which was a command decision derivative of Modern. Let's see here. You can see the difference between. This is the same color with the Agrax Earthshade, and then we came back and we dry brushed the same core color back. So we added some little bit of modulation, and it's really mindless. The paint's really thin. I didn't cover up over any detail, and it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. But we were playing this modern micro armor game, and this guy came in who was, I'm gonna say, not all there, and he had been in the Marine Corps, and he wanted to play Mortarmen. You got me some Mortarmen. I want to play some Mortarmen, and then he just started rattling off all the stuff like, mortar base weighs 35 pounds, mortar tube weighs 15 pounds, just like an animatronic person, and I'm like, dude, get away from me, man. No, I don't have any. I don't have any American Mortarmen. I didn't, you know. When I did Modern Micro Armor, I had British Army of the Rhine. Just chieftains are sexy, and I had West Germans. I had Leopard 1s, a few Leopard 2s, and chieftains. And those rules in particular, if you had a M1 Abrams, it's just stop playing the game. It was just unbelievably indestructible, and maybe that's accurate, but doesn't make a good game, you know. Hollywood and the big TV companies rule. We do chuckle over here at how they depict things. Yeah. Well, just remember, just because we're over here, we're not necessarily in agreement with what they decide to depict. What was that movie many years ago, U-571, about capturing the Enigma machine, and there's no Brits in it? Like, come on, man. You guys were the ones that did it. That's why I call it Hollyweird. So we're not trying to cover everything. We want to leave some of that darkness there. Oh, it's still early. Now, the only thing I hate about Russians, let me rephrase that. The only thing I hate about painting Russians is that sometimes they just don't look very exciting. Like, the Germans really, and that's one of the reasons why they're so damn popular, is they're really the masters of propaganda and making things look really interesting. The British Army of the Desert comes really close, or maybe even surpassing them a couple times, because this unit of service markings that they have there on their tanks, I think, are really colorful and add something there. But the Russian stuff is just kind of, their decals and stuff are just kind of shitty, not very exciting. So even though I'm going to hand paint the stuff on here, I can't make them too truly out of control, because that's just not what the stuff look like. So you're kind of limited by what things were painted like. Now, tank slogans sometimes can take that to a different level, but these early tanks, this is like 1941 stuff. they didn't need that motivation. They hadn't lost tens of thousands of tanks yet where they needed to be motivated by writing that was on the tanks. So these won't have any tank slogans on them, these 4 vehicles, but some of the later ones will. Needless to say, the movie bombed in Britain. It was even discussed in Parliament. Yeah, I don't think it did really well here in the United States either. But Hollyweird. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good to start with that. Okay, so let's clean this out. We're just going to leave it here temporarily. I'm not going to stop and wash it out just yet. I'm going to be lazy this one time. I don't want to wake anybody that may be sleeping. And we'll go to the next step, which is use this same color with, nope, not a Recce sand, dark sand. They're almost the same thing. Nope, that's buff. Almost the same thing again. Dark sand. This is actually a guy from YouTube that did this, that I got the idea from him. And I'm like, it would be my natural reaction to have done white. But I didn't do that. I ended up doing these two. So let me get the wet palette, which, what have it here? The lid's here. I left it over here. All right. Well, that's just fine. Let's move this out of the way. And let's put this here. And the dark sand there. That was the Soviet way. Chum them out, slap green paint, and a slogan on them off to the front. Yeah, I do like the Soviet-German war gaming standpoint, because which bad guy you want to be? Which bad guy you want to be? They're both equally bad for different reasons. I think that if you were a soldier, if you were an actual soldier fighting for that nation, I think you would be better off being in the Wehrmacht. I think the Wehrmacht cared more about you than the Soviet forces did. But they're both horrible regimes that did horrible stuff. So, but all war is terrible. It's just fascinating, you know? I don't remember if I used this for the lighter color. I may No, I don't think I did. It's too much. So let's get our little trusty friend here. And we need to get the flow aid, which I just use that in place of water, just to kind of Help mix a little bit. Don't need it for this as much, but I will in the next step. And then let's see how we're looking here. It's about right. But we have live paint here, so we're going to move that onto our area here, so hopefully we don't make any mistakes and get it all over ourselves. Now, why am I dry brushing there in the back? Well, because there's some details, and I want them to kind of pop a little bit. Of course, we're going to cover some of this in the with the brown. That's going to be, that's muffler color. There's no point in dry brushing that. I'm just going to end up painting over it. You know, I think growing up reading about the Eastern Front, I favored one side, and just because it's easier to understand the German viewpoint because they're more Western. You know, I mean, I think like a Western person, but now, you know, it's bad if the Germans win. It's a bad situation. It's a bad situation. So, as much as I hate communists, you know, we know how it turned out this way. If the Germans win, it's bad, bad stuff. Should say the Germans win. The Nazis win. The Germans can win the First World War, and it wouldn't be the end of the world. If they win the second one, it's the end of the world. You have to run, my friend. Thank you for excellent company. See how they turn out later. Excellent. Thanks for coming by, Jack, as always. Enjoy your tea. I love English tea. I just don't like it warm. You know, I love the taste of that stuff. I wish I had more caffeine. If it did, I'd drink that and not coffee. So we're just going to highlight some edges here. How many other folks we got on here? 4 or 5 other silent folks. Come on, join on in. We're just kind of getting the main points here. And then we will go in and we will detail places that need to be extra stressed for them to pop. But as you can see, just adding that little bit of, well, maybe you can't see. Nah, it's getting lost in the feed. All right, let's do the turret for this guy. I guess we're painting both of them at the same time. I don't know if that was my intention, but that works. We'll go ahead and do the same thing with the other tank. And then we'll go and do the fun part, which is find out how we're going to paint these. One of these, like I said, is going to have something on the roof just to add a little bit of interest. Just add a little bit of something something there. So I'm almost done. Actually, it took me a long time to finish this book on the Eastern Front, but I don't have an opportunity really to listen to it while I'm painting since I'm doing these videos. But I'm looking forward to doing the next one. This one is the Moscow counterattack. So the next one we get into 1942. Just trying to get ideas for scenarios or something like that I can put together, and finding out new stuff that maybe I wasn't aware of along the way. And how things change our understanding than 20 years ago when the last time I looked into it was. So these models, when I took them out of the box, I'll be honest with you, they kind of look pretty shitty, but they're solid. Their plastic's a little brittle, but they went together like a glove. I was not expecting that at all. I was quite surprised how well they went together. So I recommend them. Just wish they made actually more different things. I wish they made a BT with a different turret. Just for, variety. A T-26 with a different turret, with a late turret. I think they look better. I'm not opposed to doing this one as well, but this is just a way to... one of the things that changed in the 20 years that I painted World War II stuff, since I'd painted World War II stuff, is this whole idea of the Panzer Gray having a little bit of a blue tint to it. I didn't know about that. When I used to be a 1/35th scale modeler, and maybe I wasn't aware of it, but back in the late 80s, early 90s, you just painted them Panzer Gray, and then you see examples of them where they have a little bit of a blue tint, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to figure out how to integrate that into what I'm doing, without... Because this is, I don't know how many step process this is. This is a lot of step process to paint this. I don't want to like quadruple the amount of steps, by doing a blue filter and add all these other products. I'm like, come on, I do need to get these guys on the tabletop someday. I'm not really looking for ways to take my already slow process and slow it down even more. But okay, so here's the basic color on both of these tanks. I'm going to go look and see how we're going to paint the decals on them, or pick the decals I'm going to paint. So where's my glasses so I can find myself? And let me give myself a little bit of room. And what I like to do is, I'm not opposed to buying decals, but when they're really expensive and take 2 months to get here, that's kind of a combination that's bad. So what I like to do is I like to go to eBay. Well, now that I've found them, and there's actually some folks that sell decal sets for BT7s and T26s that actually come like with 20 examples of each vehicle. And it's a company called Colibri, which in Spanish it means hummingbird. It might be, whatever language it is, but I think they're either Russian or Serbian or something like that. So I'm going to put Colibri BT7 decals. And you could go to their site as well if they had one. I don't think they do have one or something like that. And let's just see what's here. So okay, I don't want to do one of those with like the scribble side. That's stupid. I don't want to specifically make decals that look like they're poorly done because it reflects poorly on me. Even though, I did it. Well, that's how they painted them. I don't want to do something that's just really, really crummy looking. These ones that have a cross on the top of the roof in white I like, but they're all the later pattern turret. So I'd like to use one like an actual example. Okay, let me see if there's another one. And, once I pick it, I'm going to take a snapshot of it and we'll put it here on the screen so you can see what the hell I'm painting. Okay, is this an early pattern turret? It is, isn't it? It is. Okay, that's a possibility. And you can look at pictures too, but I actually prefer, and I would actually buy these decals and use the decals if they didn't take 2 months to get here. Because I'm going to have some more BTs. Man, I thought there was more. I thought there was more examples of them than just that. A lot of them are just crummy looking. I don't want to specifically paint crummy looking stuff. Yeah, they're like $20. And they're not available until mid-February. Like, I can't wait till mid-February to get them. Those have like a little triangle on there. That's like super minimalist. Let's go with these two. Let's see, is this the same one? It is. This is just more zoomed in. All right, let's see. Can we get away with doing this? All right, I need to use an actual mouse for this because I'm not a big fan of these mouse pad type things. Let's do a couple things. Let's do this. save image as, save that, and then we're also going to open up another window, and we're going to do BT7 decals and see what comes up on images. Okay, those are all the 7Ms. Oh, I like these to have the stripe along the edge of the turret. Thought there was one of those that had the early turret that came like that. I mean, obviously I could just do that myself if I wanted to. I would just like to be legitimate if I can. It'll make me feel better. It'll make me feel better about it. These are all late war ones. I mean, the later turret. That's that same decal I just copied. Unknown unit, Lithuania, summer 1941. Okay, and I like what they did there. The problem is it has no turret number on it, and we need them to have some kind of differentiate. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let's go down here. Oh, this is from a Tamiya kit. Lithuania, summer 41. Okay, and then what's this other one? Mongolia, unknown unit, Ukraine, 1941. Yeah, but they've got no turret numbers. I guess I could just add turret numbers to them. I need to identify these guys differently so that when it's their turn to get activated, you'll know which one gets activated. Honestly, I didn't think it was going to be this difficult to find them. I would have done a better job of trying to keep examples of them. Okay, I like what they did with this vehicle. Let's just save that as well. And wish I could show you guys what I'm looking at, but I'm not competent enough to do that. Okay, this set looks excellent. We have a Finland tank. I'm going to go visit this site and see what else we have here. Oh, okay. This is from the UM decal. Okay, and they're all in white. Save image as, let's save that. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to look at the instruction sheet and we're going to save images that as well. Save. All right, I think we got enough to go on. Let's go ahead and close this stuff. I don't like having a million windows open. I think it can drag the performance of your computer down significantly. Okay. Um, Camera is off. Is it? Yeah, well, I can't show you what I'm looking at. I'm not confident enough to do that. Welcome. Welcome, Justin. Joe finally woke up. Hallelujah. All right, so let's go ahead and take some of these. See, that image is over there. That's a good size image. Let's go ahead and let's do a browse. And let's put one of these up here. And why didn't it come up? There we go. Okay, these ones that have this silly triangle, that's just dumb. I'm not doing them. But I like this white cross across the roof. So we're going to do one of these with that white cross identification across the roof. And I'm going to tinker with it and modify it in my own manner. Which means I'm probably going to make it a little thinner than it is there because I don't want it to go exactly, I don't want to be exactly a thickness of those hatches across the top. I'm going to go a little thinner. So we can go ahead and minimize that. Let's start off with doing the roof cross. And if I like how it looks, I might paint them both with a roof cross on them. So let's get the wet palette out here. We still have some white from last night. Let's get a brush we have confidence in. One of these two. And wow, did the white dye overnight? Okay, good. All right, so let's put some parameters in here. Oh, we don't need this. We need the turret. All right. And I'm not painting it in pure white. So we're gonna go. Ah, yes, the squeaky chair. We're gonna go across here. Actually, you know, I want it a little thinner than that. And then we are going to center it across over those hatches. I'm just putting the center of it right now. Notice I put the center of it goes over the split in the hatch, but I don't want the depth of the split in the hatch to be in white because I need that split to still show. So we're going to draw this. Middle of that hatch like so. Middle of that hatch. So that's the center line of the cross on the roof. All right, so now let's build it out. And I'm gonna use some green in here. This doesn't need to be fully white because we're gonna go over it. And remember, this is hand painted by a Russian that's probably some form of intoxicated, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't need to be shitty either. It just doesn't have to be perfect. And obviously we're going to build that up. It's not going to stay that color. And then we will likewise go out. About that thickness for starters. Yeah, we need to stick to this till we get it in the right place. We need to stick to this color with a little bit of green in it. Okay, now let me squint my brain. All right, now let's go over it all. As if you were Russian, painting with small brush. This paint I'm using is very, very thin. Purposefully so. One thing that's throwing me off is I should have painted all of this in this like light green color and not the white. It's eventually going to be to that white color, but oh man, yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. And this is the kind of stuff I like to do. You know, the dry brushing and stuff, I feel like anybody can do that. This, putting your own personal touch on this, that's what I came here for. All right. Now, obviously, we're not leaving it this color. We're going to lighten it up. Okay? Does it go over the... No, it does not go over any part of the mantlet. Now, make sure we get some coverage on it. And we do want to look like we do want it to look like it was hand painted. So if it looks brush strokey, I'm okay with that. Can't wait to do a lot of this stuff on like T34, 85s, JS2s. And some of the pictures of that stuff, it's just a very drunk person that painted those. We don't want them to look that sloppy. What that little crumb is doing there. Let's just see what this even looks like. Yeah. Now, let's get some pure white on here. Let's thin it down. We can use the same spot. Actually, let me get away from it so I can see line thickness and see if I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm happy with that, thickness-wise. All right, so let's get in here. Now, I'm really happy with this, but as you can see, I've had to do lots of different passes on it. It's not just a paint the cross across the top and you're done with it kind of thing. And it's all done with really thin down paint. Because I do want it to have some kind of brush strokes, but they don't need to be, crazy. All right. I think this is what we need to be. And remember, it has no weathering on it, so it's going to have some weathering on it. Nice. Me likey, me likey. All right. Let's look at... I don't know that I'm going to do a cross on the other one. I want them to look a little different. I'm not so worried that they're all in the same group. Let me make sure I don't have another one that has other aerial recognition markings. Oh, where is my, here we go. Where's that instruction sheet one that I had? Here it is. Oh, this one has a white triangle. I might do that on one of them just so that they're different. That one has an entire white triangle across the whole damn thing. Well, that's interesting. Is it centered? Yeah. might do that. That way it has two different ones. That might be cool. All right, what does that decal have? Did I save? All right, let's bring that one to the forefront. Where is the decal sheet that one comes with? I don't know why it wouldn't be right next to it, but it isn't. It's like a 1-4 on it. Okay. Right. Let's make this one bigger. X15, X9. We're going to make this one X9. Is this attached on here now? Okay, good. X9, and it's even with that. Okay. I'm going to do the 9 first, and it's damn near on the edge of that. And how big is it? We can make this smaller now. Okay, it's about like that. All right. I need to quit my day job. My day job's holding my ass back. Wow. Okay, and we can clean that up a little bit, but man, it's just not going to take much cleaning. But the flow aid is the secret. Flow aid, thinner, something that's not water that keeps this paint flowing correctly so that it doesn't like catch. All right, we're going to do right on that thing. It's about that big. Okay, got it. Look at that. I may clean that up a little bit, or I may not. That's pretty darn. I'm pretty darn happy with that. Let's go over to this other side. But the secret is, take one stroke at a time. use a liner style brush. I'm leaving that shit alone. Markings on this one complete. Now, what's the other one? This one has a triangle on the roof. Excellent. All right, let's get rid of, and not this particular one. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this drawing, which is it this one? Yes, okay. And let's substitute a different drawing on here, which is this one right here. And we're going to do done. All right, and it's this one in the bottom here. This is actually, I think, an I-4 under that triangle on the side. But we have a triangle on the roof. Let's see if I can, where I can put that that's not going to be too obtrusive. I don't know that I'm going to be able to put it somewhere it's not too obtrusive. What if I made it smaller? I don't need it to be super big. There. Oh. Right there. Okay. So that's a white triangle we're going to put on the roof. Got it. Challenge accepted. And we're going to go a little green first. Just kind of fill in where it's going to go. All right. And the point points to that. And it's going to go past the hatch. Okay, so it's going to go there. And I may not make it look exactly the same because that decal actually looks like it's not centered. And that just looks too chaotic for my taste. But we're going to go from that point there let's draw a line between those. Let's thin this down. Just kind of sketch it. Kind of sketching using paint. And then I'm going to look at it and go, does that look right? And I'm going to go, it doesn't, because the line between these two isn't necessarily straight between the two. But it looks like a equidistant triangle. That's what the shape's going to be. All right, so let's fill this thing in. And again, the secret is we're gonna go over this a few times, so don't use super thick paint. Don't try to do it in one pass. It's not gonna work. I don't care how good you are. It's not going to work. Damn, that looks. Damn, that looks good. Now I wish they had more markings on them. I wish there was like a little red star or something on there, but they didn't do that. And we are going to do more BTs. I mean, I need about 6 or 7 of them. This brush is behaving very well. Okay, that's where we're at right now. And again, I have to keep my wrist braced. Those people that paint in midair, I don't know how the hell they do it. And this is not particularly stressful. You just have to do one at a time. You got to put something in the paint that keeps it from catching along the way. And this flow aid works nicely, even though I'm not using it properly. You're supposed to mix it with water, 1 part 20. You got time for that. Just put it in there. I'm only using a little bit of it. It's maybe that proportion to the actual paint. And then let's just go full white on here. Let's thin this down some more. All right. And this one has little diamond logos there. Really small, and it's like a 1-4 in it. All right, so let's go in. I think I'll take it off of here to do it. There we go. Now, which side of the barrier is it on? Is it in front of it or behind it? It is forward of it. Okay. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. It's forward of it. May not be in the best focus, but don't really want to go in there and tinker with that just right this moment. Careful how we do this. there's our two tanks. We're actually going to, let's clean this up a little bit. Okay. Here is the two BT7s. Now, we do tracks and stuff like that. So let's grab one of them. We still have some of the track color there, but I think I'm going to need a little bit more. This one. And we don't want to use this super extra excellent paintbrush. It served us well. I want to use this little bastard right over here. Let's do the road wheels first, actually. Let's do the road wheels first. Let's get this out of the zone where stuff can fall on it. That's just flat. That's just black, right? That's just black. And I don't paint rubber things in a dark gray. And the reason why is this is going to get dry brush and it's going to get with at least two colors. I don't want it to start dark gray. It'll end up being light gray by the time I'm done, and that's just not going to look right. So we do want it to look dark gray, but that's why we got to start with black. Back when I was doing 1/35th scale tanks, this process is really painstaking. After you've painted like a shitload of Legionnaires or something like that in 15mm scale, this is child's play. This is like, oh, this paint's done in, this monotonous paint is done in no time. I mean, there's only 4 rubber road wheels on either side. Even when you're doing like a Panzer IV or something like that that has a ton of them, it's still pretty easy. Okay, we did that side, so let's flip to this one. We should be able to see the other side of these from there. Yep. Now, flow aid works wonders to keep this flowing right and not catching. And that's one side done. I gotta take a little potty break. I'll be right back. Okay. Now see light at the end of the tunnel, meaning getting the two BTs and the two 226s done today. Check 38s will be next. The three check 38s with their big numerals on the side of the turrets. Those will not be hand painted. We will use decals for those. Because I had them, and the German numerals are a lot neater than the Russian ones. Although, I use Russian numerals too. Russian decals if I had them. All right, let's paint the edges of these road wheels here. These are actually really nice models, and they're really inexpensive. These Pegasus. The plastic is oh so brittle though, and translucent in places. But now that it's built, I mean, they really look really nice. there's no point in painting both of these like they're part of some unit. They may only be one in a battle, they might be two, but it's just an opportunity to do a couple different schemes on them. And it's kind of silly to. Well, it just depends. Like the Czech 38s, they're all going to be similar. They're all going to have. I think they are. I may change my mind and. Let's not worry about stuff that we're not working on right now. I'm sure I will come to the right decision when the time comes to make it. Okay, I'm just flip to this side. It's nice that they don't have return rollers. That's one less thing you got to paint. Okay. And let's go ahead and do the same thing on this other one since we seem to be painting them both at the same time. It's just kind of how things worked out. We need more of that. Flow aid. One drop's plenty. 3 hours and 32 minutes. I've done more in this 3 hours and 32 minutes today than I've done in many times, so. See what you can see from this side. This is infinitely easier by using this flow aid to get the paint that just kind of go where you need it to go. Without this, it would be a lot slower. Big help. Big help. Now, one thing I do like about these plastic kits is that they don't weigh anything, so I don't have to put like a death grip on it when I'm kind of holding it. So that keeps me from scuffing up my own paint where my fingers are touching it. It's just kind of nice. This guy has a machine gun that's here, and this one does as well. Okay. And now we do the road wheels on the other side. What's everybody working on these days? Anything exciting? Anything World War II? We'll see how those buildings look in the natural light. Hopefully we have some Soviet vehicles we can put in the picture with them. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Wish these Pegasus guys made other versions of the BT, of which there's several. A BT5, which is almost the same as this one, except it's got riveted construction. The 7M, which is just a different turret. Let's flip this side over like this. Let's make sure we don't touch the roof. Don't want to undo the work I've done. Okay, and see if I've missed something. Doesn't look like it. All right, let's go back to the one that's drier. Rinse this out, and we're going to paint the tracks. Yeah, really happy with the way that looked. And it's kind of minimalist paint job, but all these early tanks, none of them are going to have any slogans. These were of an earlier period where they didn't think that they needed that kind of motivation yet. Sure, the round turret version will be available somewhere 3D printed. Yeah. Good morning, Jeffrey. Yeah, the problem with the 3D printed is that the cost of shipping. I've got one. My BP cast one, which apparently is 1/76 scale. It's smaller. Whatever. They're War Games models. They're okay. But I painted this one earlier. I changed my painting style a little bit. I like what I'm doing now, but I'm not going to repaint this thing, or it looks good enough. There's there's several 3D printers that I like, and of course they're all in the UK, the land of toys. And there's that problem in the UK right now. They can't ship things overseas due to a kind of virus or whatever. Malware, hacking thing, something. The land of toys. Only thing I don't know if this glue will work on 3D printed stuff. I guess it depends if it's the resin stuff, which that's the stuff I really like. The resin stuff wouldn't I don't think would work well with that. Yeah, the super glue or use epoxy, and yeah, I love using this weld cement. I'm gonna need to take a break soon because I am lay hungry. See if we can get through the tracks on both vehicles, and then we'll take a break. But I'd rather pay for the 3D printed thing overseas than I would to make my own and have to fight with the machine and all that. So prepping to put together a first to fight Panzer 38T. Oh, those are cool. Found it this week along with a 7TP still attached to the magazines while rationalizing the sable pile. What's the sable pile? I did a 7TP many years ago in 1/35th scale from a Polish company. I think I did it in a 3-color camouflage too. I used pastels for weathering. That's back when that was the thing. You'd take, pastels and sandpaper, and you'd scrape them over sandpaper, almost like you were trying to, grate carrots or something like that. And then you would dust your model with that, and then sealed it carefully. Stuff acquired beyond life expectancy. Yeah, we all have that stuff for sure. I wish they weren't so expensive. And they're not really that expensive, but I've been on a quest to kind of find a Panzer 4D or an E, or both, or one of each. I just can't bring myself to buy the armor fast ones because they just lack so much detail. So I think the direction to go into is going to be to get a couple of Mirage ones, but they're like $24 each, and I don't need them anytime soon. I don't want to touch the roof and undo my handiwork that I'm very happy with how it turned out. I've been hemming and hawing about the armor fast because it actually comes with a turret back to it. The turret storage, which it's got to have that. And I have one F1. The E, nobody makes an E that I found really inexpensive. Of course, an E is just an up armored D. They're very similar, so either one of those two will work. But the Armor Fast D is just missing so many details. I mean, it's missing a jack. I got extra jacks I can probably put on there, but it doesn't have a horn or any tools or anything molded on there. It's gonna look really barren. I'd have to like put all kinds of package and packs and stuff on there to make it look lived in. But tanks are fun to buy. Really should get some Soviet anti-tank guns, that set from Plastic Soldier Company, but stuff acquired beyond life expectancy. Love it. Okay, that one's done. It's not even weathered, man. This thing looks damn good. This thing looks damn good. $36 degrees out. Fahrenheit. Wow, I need to step outside and enjoy that. Of course, it's cold in the house. If I'm wearing long sleeves, it's cold. And I do like wearing long sleeves, but I never can. All right, let's see what kind of damage we did. Nothing. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Don't be a fumblefuck. Jeffrey, you probably know this. In World War II, the Scottish infantry, I don't know how many infantry divisions they had. They had at least one. Did the Scottish infantry divisions fight in the desert? Or just Northwest Europe and Italy? I don't think they fought in the desert. I mean, the Kiwis were out there and the Australians, South Africans. I'm thinking they didn't. I just don't see how I can get away with not doing desert stuff eventually. If I stick on my World War II tear, the desert stuff is just way too interesting to not do it. What do I need? Another drop of this stuff? Yeah. '51st Highland Division fought at Alamein. It was their first battle after being rebuilt after being captured in France in 1940. Okay. Alamein. Alamein has a huge variety of vehicles. A huge variety. You got Grants and Valentines, and I'm sure there's some Matildas left as well, and Honeys, Shermans. That's just for the Allies. The other place has a huge variety of vehicles. It's Tunisia. Okay, let's grab this over here. I hope they didn't use kilts in the desert. That would be extremely inconvenient. Not that using kilts anywhere would be convenient. Not by my definition of convenience. Okay, and let's do the top section here. Make sure there's nothing really standing out like a problem. to go eat something because I'm starving. And then we'll have to do some of this mix, pick out some things that really need to be highlighted, and then we can weather, and then they'll be done. So damn near done. Let's rinse this off. Let's take a look at these two guys. Obviously we got to paint the mufflers too. Not bad for dry brushing. Of course, they're going to end up looking a little bit more like these guys by the time we're done. But yeah, there you have it. Really happy with the arrow recognition on the top of the vehicles. Adds a little bit of fun there. And well, anyways, thanks for stopping by, folks. Almost 4 hours, so got a lot done, and we'll see you guys